Originally, we were just neighbors who had moved to the same area at the same time. All six of us were of a similar age when my wife Claudine and I moved in. The couple across the street, and Carrie, already had a 2-year-old, and Claudine was 6 months pregnant by the time Ginny and Jeff moved into the house next door with their 1-year-old. The gender dynamics between our families seemed to even out. As expected, our wives became good friends, and we men formed close bonds too, partly because our wives all had children of a similar age. Over the years, after 5 years of living in our close community, we had 7 children together. Through the Pulpy school events, parent committees, mentorship, and numerous other activities, we were practically one family. Even though our children grew up together, interestingly, none of them fell in love. Even after 20 years, when I turned 49, I was the oldest, and Carrie was the youngest in our group at 42. The rest of us were somewhere in between. Ginny and Jeff had 3 children, 2 of whom were in college, while the youngest in middle school was and Carrie's twin daughters were in their senior year of high school. Our son Devin had joined the Navy after high school graduation, and our oldest daughter Chelsea was attending Pennsylvania State University. We had all become empty nesters. Eventually, all of our spouses returned to the workforce. Like many young couples, we struggled financially at first when we moved into the neighborhood. However, we had all achieved varying degrees of financial stability. Claudine worked at a large medical facility in our community and was a registered nurse. Ginny started her flower shop after her early employer, a small business, retired, and Carrie was an accountant at a lumber supplier. It was typical middle America, with Republicans and Democrats among us, with the exception of and Carrie, who regularly attended Catholic Mass. We were Christians, at least nominally. The rest of us went to church mainly for occasions like Christmas and Easter. We had a real friendship and enjoyed each other's company. Over time, we learned that it was best to stick to general topics when talking about politics and religion. Although we were close, we also had other friends and acquaintances both in and outside our neighborhood. As our children grew older and our dependence on each other decreased, we naturally transitioned to a different type of relationship. The decline in shared responsibilities, such as attending parent committees, picking up the kids from school or sporting events, or helping with babysitting, led to this change. Eventually, we realized we were growing apart. I don't know who came up with the idea, but we decided to have poker nights every first and third Friday of the month. Occasionally, we played canaster. Instead, neither of us had the patience or desire to master bridge. Although we tried a few times, our marriage partners were the better organizers and frequently changed the topics of our get-togethers. We enjoyed quiz nights, classic movie nights, exotic simmering chili cooking contests, and even the timeless game of charades. The hosts always had plenty of wine, beer, and spirits available, but no one ever overdid it, and neither of us was teetotal. Although we were good friends, we rarely flirted with each other. Occasionally, jokes didn't count. The conversations rarely turned to sexual topics, unless it was about the latest scandal in a politician or a celebrity. Our wives all remained attractive. Even though they sometimes put on a few extra pounds, they all maintained a healthy weight and dressed to show off their best features without being provocative. I am, of course, biased, but my wife was the most beautiful person in our circle. She embodied the charm of the girl next door, was 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighed 110 lbs, had striking green eyes, short chestnut brown hair, and wore a size 3. Aside from the incredible intimacy we enjoyed at least twice a week, I could count on one hand the number of major arguments we had during our nearly 26-year marriage. No, we were still close. Everything was going smoothly until about a month ago when I visited a client for a quarterly audit. I work as a freelance accountant focusing on small and medium-sized businesses. Every 3 months, I visit my clients' offices to check their general ledgers, prepare tax forms for federal and state taxes, and verify employee insurance. Most of my clients have a gross income of less than $10 million. One of my oldest clients, Max Tollison, who I would also call a friend, invited me to his office. We had hosted numerous parties for him and his late wife Sylvia at our home, and were often guests at theirs. When I arrived, Max was not there, but Louise, his accountant, put me up in the conference room. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Max arrived, and I was so engrossed in my work that I hardly noticed him sitting across from me at the large conference table. I have always enjoyed Max's company. He is a robust, open-minded man in his 60s with His disdain for many things, especially politicians. We have often exchanged views about our mutual disdain for almost all local, state, and federal political figures. I looked up and gave him a friendly smile. When I recognized him sitting across from me, he seemed hesitant. And when he started to speak, "I am so sorry for you, including Charlie, you too, were like a rock to me," he said, and looked me over curiously. I was intrigued, but sure that what he thought was a mistake was. "What did you hear?" I smiled. As I asked, the more he went on, the more embarrassed he seemed. "Damn, did I just say something inappropriate?" he stammered. "Max, what did you hear?" I pressed, although it was more of a rhetorical curiosity. "What makes you think my family is unstable?" His expression revealed that he would gladly use an ejector seat to escape the situation. Max and I had been friends for years, so I remained patient. "What exactly did you hear, and who did I persuade him from?" He took a deep breath before asking, "Are you and Choden okay? Are you still together, and aren't you thinking about a divorce or anything like that?" I just shook my head. "Oh no," he exclaimed. "Oh," he mumbled me, and my big mouth just ignore what I said. "Charlie, I'm a narcissist, and I probably mixed up names. You know, I'm getting older. Sometimes I walk into a room and remember why I walked, and I know I'm supposed to do something, but it just slipped my mind." I knew Max was just wasting time, wanted to hustle, but his reactions reminded me of his early days in the business, when he often got his hands dirty. Max was neither stupid nor forgetful, and that's why he still hadn't convinced me. "Come on, Max, stop this nonsense," I said more sharply than I intended. What had started as surprise at his question had turned to suspicion. "Well, fine then. Well, it probably doesn't mean anything." He gestured dismissively. I didn't really hear anything before I could object, which was clearly another delaying tactic. He continued, "I have some problems with high blood pressure, and my doctor changed my medication and has me come in twice a week so he can keep an eye on it. He is one of those medical professionals who share an office with your spouse. I had one of those appointments about a month ago. The doctor walked past me while I was waiting at the front desk. He didn't look me in the eye and muttered, 'Damn child,' to no one in particular. The girl at the front desk finally called my name and directed me to go to room D, mentioning that the doctor would be in shortly. I'm too proud to admit that I don't hear very well, although I was pretty sure she said D. All the doors were locked, so I carefully opened the door marked D to take a quick look inside before I went, and I didn't want to disturb some poor soul in a compromising situation like being poked in an awkward place with a finger caught in a glove. When I got a peek inside, I noticed him sighing reluctantly. I saw Cloden and a man wearing a green coat, the prescribed attire for patients in hospitals and doctors' offices. I appreciate it when it's easy to tell who is who. Doctors have stethoscopes around their necks and wear ties with white coats that are 3/4 the length. Nursing school uniforms are starched white and wear caps. Janitors look like janitors, while nurses' assistants wear coats. These days, with all the political correctness, it's important to know exactly who is touching you." Max stumbled again, and the look on his face made it clear he didn't want to go on. Even though my heart was racing, I kept my composure and continued, "Max, I need to hear what you saw. Even if it's not what I want to hear, you can't put the genie back in the bottle once you open a can of worms." "Max, I know this is awkward, but I promise not to shoot the messenger." I tried to add, trying for humor, which I definitely didn't feel. "I can tell you, Charlie, I almost lost my pants and they didn't notice me quietly closing the door," he said. Max seemed to think he had done his duty by revealing everything, but I couldn't leave such a serious matter unresolved. "Max, did you see them kissing?" I urged him on. "Did she kiss him? Did they hug? Did they smooch? Were they in close proximity? What did it look like exactly?" "Max, please give me something." "Oh no." "Oh," he said, "yes, they were standing very close to each other and kissing." He slid his hand, whatever you want to call it, under her blouse. The kiss seemed much more intense than just a simple kiss. The man looked like he was in his early 40s, with wavy chestnut hair. As far as I could tell, I couldn't make him out clearly. I closed the door and returned to the registration desk, where I was told I should have been in room B instead of D. When my doctor arrived, my blood pressure was 240/122. God forbid he even considered putting me in hospital. I spoke up, "Because I thought you and Clinton were going to get a divorce." After seeing what I had been through, Max stood behind me stroking my shoulders, and I couldn't tell you how long I sat there with my head down. "Charlie, I want to tell you something I've never told anyone before, something I'm deeply ashamed of," he murmured, leaning forward gently. I felt a deep and abiding affection for my Sylvia. I wanted to die to be with her. When she died, we all make mistakes because we are human. About 20 years ago, I attended a conference I had money in my pocket, and my business was starting to flourish. The world seemed to be my oyster. I was young, I invited a woman over, and the combination of hormones and alcohol was overwhelming. We spent the night together. I couldn't even tell you her name or what she looked like if my life depended on it, because she was also married. And at another convention, I just remember waking up alone, realizing what I had done, and having a bad headache. Big Max, sobbing into his pillowette. His own betrayal. I'm sure Sylvia will discover what I did if there's a God in heaven. I just hope she will forgive me, so we can be together again someday. Charlie, listen carefully. Maybe what I saw really was a one-time incident, a fleeting moment of human weakness. Consider this before you do anything. The tears were now streaming down my face, even though I tried to hold them back. I don't think I can stay here and carry on working, I said in a shaky voice, reaching over my shoulder to stroke Max's hand. Now my thoughts were elsewhere. Max was calling to hell with taxes, and to hell with the corrupt, blood-sucking government in a booming voice that was more like the Max I've known for years. Leave this place. You can finish it later. I thought hard about Max's comment on human weakness. I also thought about the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. Even though kissing and fondling may not be enough to destroy a marriage, knowing that Claudine was at work, I left Max's office and went straight home. I decided to play detective and search the drawers for unknown underwear. I even rummaged through the laundry basket for items that might provide evidence. I searched for 30 minutes to no avail. Bev, I gave up. It seemed likely that your phone or purse contained some clues. My wife works from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. When she came home, she found me in the kitchen where I was finishing the dish. An open bottle of Chardonnay was on the table. She poured herself a glass of wine and gave me a quick kiss on the lips. I couldn't shake what Max had mentioned, and so our conversation over dinner was somewhat connected. After dinner we saw distant, mostly silent, even though Claudine noticed my changed behavior. She said nothing. When we finally went to bed, Claudine disappeared into her walk-in closet and came out again with my favorite perfume and my beloved purple berries in her hand. With her hand resting gently on my thigh, she lay down next to me in bed and leaned forward for a passionate kiss. A little later, she joked teasingly, "It seems like someone could use some encouragement tonight." Her choice of words made me wonder if there was a deeper meaning. But as her gentle touches brought us closer, these thoughts gradually faded. Claudine was exceptionally passionate that evening and showed an intimacy and love that reduced my insecurities. We shared a brief moment of closeness that reminded me why we had been together for so long. She had a way of making me feel like I belonged to her in these moments. She didn't say much, but her loving gestures and subtle expressions gave me the security I needed. Max's revelations kept me awake for a long time. Even though she fell asleep quickly, I decided on starting work a little later the next morning, as I am my own boss. Before she got in the shower to prepare for her shift, Claudine kissed me deeply. I couldn't help but admire her beauty as she walked naked into the bathroom. I hoped she wasn't running off with anyone else. I went downstairs to make myself a coffee and felt more comfortable. The intimacy of the previous night had certainly eased my paranoia. I thought to myself that maybe it was just a passing slip. How could a woman who had confessed her love to me just hours before and shown such unbridled passion have a secret lover? After all, Max hadn't seen her at work for about a month. I wondered when she would have time for an affair. Yes, maybe a quick fondling and a kiss in an unoccupied examination room, but certainly not full-on intimacy in a busy doctor's office. She never worked late, never went bowling, or had girls' nights out. Maybe this is all just an arbitrary conclusion. I tried to stay optimistic, but couldn't denying that it was something special to allow another man to touch her and share a kiss with her. While I was thinking about my thoughts, Claudine entered the kitchen in her smock. I couldn't help but notice how the loose fit made her breasts seem so accessible. I had to know if something had actually happened. I guess I would never know if something was already done and over. Nevertheless, I made an appointment that same day with a detective agency that I had found in the yellow pages, and that was near my office. On the door there was a sign, Detective Agency Mellon. When I entered the office, I was surprised to see a striking woman in her 50s. She had a beautiful figure. Her hair was silver, and even under her blazer her breasts were extraordinarily pronounced. "Hello, I'm in Mellon," she greeted me and held out her hand. After I had introduced myself, I let out an uncontrollable laugh and immediately felt embarrassed. Before I could apologize, she interrupted me with a resigned tone. and said yes, don't worry, since when I was 16 people made fun of my name. She had the same cynical attitude and sardonic sense of humor often shown on TV police dramas, and I learned that she was a retired NYPD detective after I explained to her why I had come to see her and what I wanted to find out. She asked me all the relevant questions about my age, my children, my sex life, my work, and more. Than she asked a question I wasn't expecting. Have you ever cheated on your wife, Mr. Manzer? When she saw my annoyance and heard my determination, never, she explained to me that she had seen many husbands in similar situations. Mr. Manzer, Charlie, I had to ask. Because sometimes a partner cheats in retaliation for real or perceived infidelity. She added, at the moment, they only have an unconfirmed claim that someone allegedly saw their wife being touched and kissed a month ago. They also assured me that she is not having an affair and that they have a stable and satisfying sex life at home. That is what I would say from a police perspective. But I would be happy to take your money if you want to be left alone. I paid her retainer and signed the contract at home. Everything seemed normal. I was beginning to think Max was mistaken because Claudine was as happy and loving as ever. When I hadn't heard from her until the following Monday, I decided to call her at the end of the day to complete the investigation, as I figured I could bill a lot of hours at work. She called me shortly after lunch. Charlie, I think I have everything I need, she said in her typically mysterious tone. Could you stop by my office before 5? I have a date tonight and don't want to rush getting dressed. To say I was nervous when I arrived at 430 would be an understatement. The fact that she gave me no information on the phone made me nervous. When I arrived, she motioned for me to sit across from her desk. She was particularly welcoming, but her demeanor changed in subtle ways that made me feel uncomfortable. You know, Charlie, the best part of this lousy job is when I can tell a spouse they were wrong and there is no evidence of infidelity, she said quietly, and slid an envelope across my desk before I could answer. Unfortunately, she continued, this is not one of those cases, interrupting my sigh of relief. I hate my job because of situations like this. My heart was pounding, and I had to remind myself to breathe due to restricted access. I could not confirm that a colleague at the medical center had anything to do with it. However, she left her workplace on Monday around 1 p.m. probably to eat lunch and drove 2 blocks to an apartment complex where she moved into a studio apartment. This happened twice last week. She was there for less than an hour and no one else went to check on her after she left. A man left the same apartment, got into his car, and drove away about minutes later. This man, who appeared to be about years old and had gray hair, does not seem to fit the description of her friend. On Tuesday and Wednesday she had lunch with a colleague, but on Thursday she resumed her Monday routine. She stayed at the apartment again for about an hour, but this time they left the apartment together and they kissed passionately before she got into her car. Unlike my last visit, there was a big gap in the curtains, which enabled me to take some photographs. Whilst they were in the ground floor flat, his personal details, which I obtained from his license plate, and a comparison with the flat's rental records, as well as time-stamped photographs of them in the flat arriving and departing and kissing, are included in the report. Charlie, I'm going to give you some unsolicited but valuable advice. Don't open the envelope, she said after taking a deep breath. If you're planning on getting a divorce, just give it to your lawyer. But I know they won't take my advice, she said after a pause. When it happened to me, I didn't pay any attention. Either we all have a tiny masochistic tendency, which only adds to the suffering. As cliche as it may sound, it's true that good people do terrible things occasionally, but that doesn't necessarily mean they terrible people. Make things as easy as possible for yourself and your family. To do yourself a favor, revenge eats away at the soul. I stood up and fought back tears as she walked around the desk. She no longer looked like the experienced detective, gave me a gentle kiss on the cheek, and murmured, Charlie, please don't do anything rash. I understand your pain. I have been in your situation too. But time really heals all wounds and life goes on. I went back to my office and texted Claudine, I have a few problems with an exam that is due tomorrow. Before I open the package, please don't wait for me. I will be late. With love, Charlie, were the last words that stuck in my throat. But it would have been too obvious If I had said them as I did exactly the opposite of what my detective advised me. I suppose we all have masochistic tendencies. I opened the envelope besides names, dates, and duration of the visits. The report also contained a very general description of the contents of the CD. There was talk of close sexual contact. Hesitantly, and with shaking hands, I put the CD into the player. After watching the video for about 10 minutes, I followed Anne's advice to the letter. I began my planning retaliation. Cloden was still asleep when I got home, and went into our bedroom. As I watched her chest rise and fall as her chestnut hair framed her face on the pillow, I wondered where it all went wrong. As I saw the utterly innocent calm of her sleep, I briefly considered approaching her to talk. Maybe we could save our marriage if we got counseling. Then I remembered the video I had seen an hour earlier of her lying on top of him. No amount of therapy and no amount of tears could erase the image of her clinging to the head of the bed as she kneeled on the bed. How long has this been going on? I wondered. How many other people has she cheated on me with? I didn't want to know. Honestly, the answers would only torment my already broken heart even more. After a sleepless night, I woke up the next morning to find Cloden not in bed. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted up the stairs from the kitchen. The scent that used to give me a feeling of security and well-being conveyed suddenly gave me a queasy feeling. When she noticed me, Claudine was already sitting at the kitchen table eating a yogurt and sipping her coffee. "Are you okay, baby?" she asked after looking at me worriedly. "You've been tossing and turning all night." "Yes," I replied, just a growling stomach. "I'm fine now." I couldn't tell if she was relieved that I was better or just happy that my restlessness wasn't due to rumors that she was cheating on me. "In any case," she said with a smile, "don't forget that this Friday is poker night." I was thinking of playing the theme of hunting for the ace with the girls. "What do you think?" I said. "I have a better idea," while a vague plan started to form in my head. "You know, I want to throw the party in a slightly different way." "Okay," she replied, smiling, "as long as we women don't have to get naked." I joked sarcastically, "Don't worry, darling, even our friends wouldn't want my wife to show off her breast." "Oh, really?" she shot back with the same sarcasm. "I think I've seen you more than once as you inspected Ginny's decolleté." "Well, there is a big difference between looking and touching," I replied, and forced myself to laugh. She just put her cup in the sink, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and went off to work. So apparently my comment went completely unnoticed. My plan was not fully developed. I spent a few hours that day gathering the things I needed, and the next day I spent a few more hours gathering the information and materials necessary to carry out my plan. To be honest, I had a great idea that I could probably sell if it didn't have such dire consequences. On Tuesday and Wednesday evening, I managed to postpone intimacy with my wife, but on Thursday, Claudine no longer took no for an answer. She quickly got what she wanted. Even if I wasn't interested, I thought that maybe she had already received her lover's attention at lunch. Because it was Thursday, damn, I thought, why should I be denied her talent? A few minutes later, I was in a trance, and Claudine, who loved to give as much as Nam, was trembling with pleasure. On Friday, after our guests arrived, we gathered in the living room, sipped cocktails, and nibbled on the packaged treats I had picked up at the supermarket. The conversation was light and revolved mainly around our children, work, local events, and other topics of interest. Ginny was particularly noticeable. "So, Charlie, I hear you've thought up a new game for us to play tonight," she remarked. She turned to me and flashed her cleavage. "Are we girls in for something amazing?" "Exactly," I said. "The game is really fascinating in my opinion, and I have put a lot of effort into developing it." We head into the dining room, where each seat is marked with a name tag. Each player is given a pen and paper. I will act as moderator and timekeeper as I develop the game and know the answers. Each number on the name tags has 4 subsections: A, B, C, and D. The numbers range from 1 to 10. Each player has 30 seconds, and I will pass around 10 photos one at a time. Let's say, for example, the photo is of Laurel and Hardy. If a player knows both the first and last name, they get all 4 points. If they only know his last name, he gets 2 points. If Stan knows Laurel but cannot remember that Hardy's first name is Oliver, he gets 3 points. In other words, for each before and after, half a point is awarded. If the player can only remember Humphrey Bogart and not his film partner, but the picture shows both Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, he only gets 1 point for the round. Do you have any questions? Oh, and there is a theme that connects all the pictures together. Anyone can call out what they think the theme is at any time for every wrong guess. You lose a point, but if you are right, the final score increases by 2 points. Claudia sat at the head of the table. I was to her right. Jeff sat to my right, and next to him sat his wife Ginny. On the same side of the table opposite Ginny sat Carrie. Her husband Sel sat to her right, and Claudine completed the circle to his right. Every game we had played so far seemed trivial, and everyone was eager for a bigger challenge. I warned you not to show the photo to your neighbors, because that would give you the advantage of having more time. I started the stopwatch and handed Jeff the first picture face down. To start the game, I started with Lusselball and Desi Arnaz, who seemed to be one of the easiest pairs. I saw Jeff grin as he wrote down his answers. In less than 10 seconds, passed the picture face down to Carrie, who seemed less confident than her husband. When I rang the clock, she scribbled something, hesitated for 5 seconds, then turned the photo over and passed it on with a slightly annoyed look. Chudin seemed pleased when the picture got to her, and quickly wrote down her answers. The next picture was SCH and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and everyone seemed sure of their answers. The third picture showing Tipper and G. The participants needed more time, possibly because it was harder to remember Mrs. G's first name. A picture Jerry Lewis and P.Y. Lewis was next. Even would have known her name if I hadn't found it online, even though they were married for 38 years. Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins followed, and it seemed that they all liked the next picture with Reba McEntire and Narvel Blackstock. It was a real challenge. There were good-natured protests with comments like "that's not fair" and "who the hell knows them." Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes made everyone smile, while Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston caused an even bigger grin. Jeff, who was the most confident, then spoke up. "I'd like to guess what the topic is." I apologized and imitated the horn sound from old game shows as best as I could. Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe were next, followed by Mickey Harg and Jane Mansfield. There were several compliments on how well I had done the game, and everyone leaned back in their chairs. "We're not finished yet," I explained. "You only have 5 seconds, but for every correct answer you get 3 more points. I've also included a bonus photo." Everyone seemed to be happy about the chance to get extra points, but I took my time handing the photo to Jeff, who smiled confidently. His smile disappeared, however, when he turned it over, and he didn't even pick up his pen. He just sat there expressionless, staring at the picture. Chuckled and remarked, "Wow, that must be hard." "Time's up, Jeff," I said firmly, and pressed the timer. "Give Ginny the picture." Reached the photo, passed to Ginny, who grinned triumphantly at not recognizing the person. Without turning it over, she gasped, but dropped the picture and covered her mouth with her hand as she finally looked down and saw the 4 pictures on the 8 or 10-inch page. In one picture, Claudine was seen on the bed in a private moment. In another, she was seen with someone in a compromising position. The next picture showed her in a setting that suggested intimate physical interaction. In the last picture, she was kneeling beside the bed performing an intimate act. In virtually every photo, the man's familiar face was clearly visible. "Ginny, it's time to go," I said. "Give Carrie a chance," I remarked kindly. Ginny gave me a regretful look, but made no move to pass the picture. Carrie grabbed after the picture. It pushed itself towards itself and laughed. "Come on, let the others do it too." Finally, Carrie grabbed the glass bowl with the onion dip in the middle of the table. She hurled it in S's face and screamed, "You damn bastard," while she stared indifferently at the pictures. When she was pushed off his chair, he tried to wipe the onion dip and the blood that was dripping from his nose from his eyes and face, while Claudine stood there stunned. Jeff and Ginny sat stoically and watched the scene. S screamed, "What the hell?" While he tried to get back on his feet, Claudine stared at the pictures. When Carrie grabbed them, pressed them in her husband's face, and hissed at him with these words. She kicked him in the groin. "That's it. What the hell, you slimy piece of __." Carrie walked around the table, approached Claudine, who had her arms wrapped around herself and was crying quietly, and hit her so hard in the face that my wife stumbled and a china dish broke. While Sel curled up in the fetal position, Carrie turned around and screamed, "Don't even think about coming home, you unfaithful bastard," and looked disdainfully at her groaning husband. "Never, never tonight." Then she stormed out of the room. The room went silent, except for Claudine muffled sobs, until I muttered, "By the way, the topic for tonight is divorced couples."